I'd like to welcome Jason. He put out a public call earlier this year for Apple II floppies to image, and he's gotten spectacular results back, and he's going to share them with us. Thanks, Jason.
No problem. Hello, and hello to my stream, my little 25 friends who have been with me on the way, and I have sacrificed way too much for you, and you do not deserve any of it. But remember, all the good stuff is happening here at KansasFest Gold, or KansasFest Plus Pass, which is what we call attending KansasFest and not being on the internet. Anyway, so hello, this is called the Great Apple Roundup. My name's Jason Scott. I've now been here for a number of years, and so one of the problems with my talks now is I'm kind of torn between talking for 5 minutes about what it is I do in life and not having everyone go, we know exactly who you are, shut up. And so I'll do it very, very quickly right now, okay? So I work for a place called archive.org. My title is Free Range Archivist, and I do a massive amount of stuff involving the ingestion of material into the Internet Archive, which itself is known for the Wayback Machine and a bunch of other stuff. And it's in this big, crazy building, and it's a beautiful place to work. In there, they have all sorts of material online, and it's a digitally oriented place. So, for instance, these are 78 RPM records, which we have been now digitizing by the thousands. And we are putting them up, and they're getting a lot of reaction, and it's great. My area is more in the realm of software. So I've been doing software to a great degree, especially this last couple of years, and we now have something like 7,000 or 8,000 CD-ROMs up. And we're just going to continue that kind of trend. Problem with all this, of course, is that I was quickly asked, well, it's nice that you've got these ISOs up, but that doesn't really help the regular patron. Can you do something? So I got involved in something which eventually has now been called the emularity, which is the ability to run things in the browser, which for the purposes of this crowd means the Apple II and other things. And it's a success. This is the year we just 2 weeks ago, we switched over to WebAssembly, which means it now runs really fast, and then we started turning on the MAME code like an errant child, and we've started to look into changing the program flow in the case of putting it on the web so it's faster and more effective, and also the using some of the better details that MAME now has for accurately emulating the Apple II disk operation. So that's going to be a thing that's continuing, and it's a huge success, right? So the emularity mostly portrays itself to people for the purposes of this crowd for something like this, where there is a bunch of discs with screenshots. You click on them, you play them. And if you are like, I will not be able to live my life much longer unless I can play Microzine Junior 3 Disc 2 Side A, your day is now complete. There it is. You're going to be great. All right, and of course, a lot of these things are completely useless on the web, but they do provide you with 1 or 2 second load times to be able to experience them. And I think that's one of the hardest parts about old software. You go for the classic if you know it's there, but being able to speculatively look through, do that virtual flipping through of the box, booting it up and seeing what's in it, I think that's like a vital part of the experience and discovering works and arts that haven't been there before. Anyway, so here's a wallaby. In Australia, you can feed a wallaby right out of your hand. So this little guy ate out of my hand, and I had a GoPro, and he wasn't the wiser. Anyway, but I also had a heart attack. So this is what my heart looked like when I went into the hospital in Australia. And then this is after Sonny Palmer removed the blockage. So all this came back. Somehow I was able to walk 25 miles and go up 100 flights of stairs because of my Fitbit during the process of the heart attack. So I'm really hard to kill, so remember that tonight. Okay? And actually, this is Dr. Sonny Palmer. So he was able to go in, kind of like mess around. I was awake for the operation, and they played Bon Jovi's "You Give Love a Bad Name," which is a terrible choice of heart operation music. Anyway, so this was unexpected. That was earlier this year. I'll let you know that I'm completely back to health. My heart did not get any damage. Everything's fine. My cholesterol is now so low they had to take some of my drugs away from me. So haha. But I'm doing fine. Now, when you hit something like that in some kind of live operation, and I'm 46, you might be inclined to go like, well, I guess I better slow down or something. So I instead, this is me, of course, immediately doing a selfie in the bathroom in my full hospital scrubs because the Australian hospital scrubs are really awesome. They're like full thing. So this is the new ad for Obsession. And of course, one could be inclined to just kind of like move on to other things, right? And I'm just not really kind of built that way. Screw it. So like within like a couple weeks afterwards, this is 40 pallets of manuals being loaded into a truck to go to the Internet Archive that I'll see about scanning. So yeah, no, I'm going on full steam. And these are all the software boxes that are sitting at the Internet Archive waiting for me or others to ingest. That's actually inaccurate. There's 6 of them. But you know, I'm going full steam ahead. So anyway, that's the path I took. Not everyone might take that path. In doing so, I wanted to kind of reimagine a lot of what I was doing. There wasn't much to shift around or get away from. But I did feel like it was really important to note that right now, like 2017, we are in a golden age of Apple II preservation, especially software, because we are blessed with an enormous skill set, a pretty finite software set, a popular computer that was worldwide that has really functional use. Like it's not hard to get one up and running. It's not hard to work with. A lot of it has been explored. So like we're in this like really beautiful place right now. Unlike a lot of other platforms, and I don't have time to go into them, where that is actually difficult because of the way the market worked and the way they made things and who they made them for and how much interest there is. I mean, there's software that is available down to some cases where there's only like a handful of 4 or 5 people who could really even do half of what literally hundreds can do in the Apple II. So we're blessed with people like 4AM, pictured here, who's able to like apply rocket science level technology to this, along with others, of course. And so I recognized that this was the time to kind of go after it. And also I was worried about people like 4AM getting bored, because once you create something like Passport, you end up with a situation that there's just this kind of clonking machine, and you're like, well, anyone can do this, and then you let anyone do this, which means that all the stuff that they can't do gets considered to be industrial waste and thrown off to the side. So I wanted to like increase that numbers. There's a lot of things involving communities, which is probably intuitive once you hear it, but communities become very insular, and they also have a habit of kind of shifting the worldview to function around that community. So the theory is everybody knows about Asimov, everybody knows about KansasFest, everybody knows about Call Apple, everybody knows. And the thing is that that's not fundamentally true. It basically indicates whether or not you are active in the community. So there are people who are active in the community who aren't really checking up on what other people are doing. There are people who have a small circle of friends, or there are people who were big cheese and walked away in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, and they have no idea that any of this horseshit's going on. They have no idea. So I wanted to break through that. And that was what I did. So I wrote this thing called Please Help Us Track Down Apple II Collections. It was a very large explanation of what we needed. And it was basically, please give me all of your piles of floppies, because I think we can do anything we want with them, and we can get around stuff not existing. So The Guardian picked it up and talked about it. Cult of Mac picked it up. A bunch of places started to pick it up. Even Reddit picked it up. And for instance, here in Reddit, we have somebody saying, well, I have 4 shoeboxes worth of discs. I got it for $1 20 years ago that I thought about making a copy of. What do I do? Do I just mail this guy? Like, what do I do? And then somebody in the room stops by and says, well, he'll do it. He's good. Do it. I vouch for him. And the guy goes, great, awesome. So he sent them to me, and this is what they look like. So he laid them out. That is one bold little pirate. Walk in and your kid has misspelled the thief box. Wow. But there's also a little bit of OPSEC going on here, because you see this little like uneaten plate, and it actually gets important, because if you look down here, this is very obviously some sort of baby's thing. So what this starts to tell you is the story of somebody who actually got a family life. Because if you have a plate that's not cleaned and you have the dishwasher right there, you're pretty busy. So the Apple II stuff is like, yeah, I got some stuff. I thought it was cool, but they've lost all those other steps. Steps that for us are just completely non-existent. We don't even think of them as barriers. Like, what do you do with a floppy? And we're like, what do you do with a floppy? And so people saw this call and they started to send me lots of floppies. And in fact, I got tons of floppies in all varying styles and approaches to getting these things. People are just unstoppable. Massive amounts of commercial software, home compilations taken from user groups and everywhere else. And what we did was we had to come up with a workflow. So here's an example of one that's been packed up. This is how I would often have it. And then here is one where it's packed into bags. Most of this stuff is me and 4am. So what we would do is we would have me go through all the discs and use ADT Pro. And I live stream it on Twitch because that's what Twitch needs. And we go through and I'm just reading them. And if there's any errors, bad disk, it's getting weird up in here, I throw it into a second box. And the purpose of this was just to cause me to triage out of 4am's life the scintillating experience of copying Lemonade for the 5,000th time. So I would go through, and you'd have like 1,000 discs, and maybe in the 1,000 discs you have 500 to 600 of them be fine, and then there would be a problem with the last third, and they would be commercial or whatever else, and then I would send those to 4am. And so, like everyone else, I've joined the Brotherhood of the Missing Disc Cover. The mystical hand symbol of scraping the crap off of the crud of the. There have been discs in our lives that have taken this from totally clean to completely unusable in one disc. So that scintillating. And so what I would end up with is this massive collection of disk images, which I would sometimes check in Cider Press or drop over onto in my case, AppleWin, just to see what it would do and go like, what are you? Because sometimes the label was awful. Like the label would just say games, or the label would say, calc with a scribble, and I'd be like, what the? And it would just be Choplifter, but it would just all be these are all like the discarded remembrances of the youth, and youth are not really great indexers. And so again, with 4am, I'd send it over. 4am would crack it through various approaches, and then it would eventually be uploaded to the Internet Archive. Right now, we're using MD5 hashes. And so what I do is I have MD5 hashes of everything on the Internet Archive, and then I take all the images, I send them back to the person who sent us the discs, along with the discs, and then I run it against the this program I have, which is internal. I'd like to API it. We were going to do it before this, but I didn't have time, but we'll do it. Where you can just say, do I have any disk images the Internet Archive doesn't? And then you can just go, oh, okay. And, a massive amount aren't, are not up there, but for various reasons, and a goodly amount are, and so that was a very simple process, right? So I just wanted to address this, and people have had various opinions about addressing this, but so this was intended to go after people who weren't even thinking of us. So I had people who responded to me with, the best one was a guy who said, our school basement is filled with Apple II discs. Do you want them for now? And I said, you betcha. Right? Well, this was some school, and so it was piles and piles and piles. We had one case of somebody who had, 60 to 70 completely unpreserved educational discs. Anyway, somebody thought it was a really smart idea to post that this was going on to CompSys Apple II. And room was immediately split into and people going, oh no. You left the baby with Clorox? So there were a couple. I had to deal with a lot of people saying, please don't respond to the people who responded. And so I just want to address it because it's very interesting to me, right? So there's multiple criticisms of a person like me within any sort of a community. So the first one is he's a self-aggrandizing bastard. That's fine. It's true and I own it. But the other ones were like, this is actually bad. They're not going to do the right thing. But one of the ones that got me, that's just ridiculous. The drama, people live very stable lives nowadays. Like, you don't wake up and your kids get a pox or a cold and you go, well, that's it for that kid. Who's going to bring in the potatoes? And it's not like that anymore. So, yeah, okay, fine. You're going to fill it up. You can turn yourself into the star of your own reality show program in which you are beset upon by people saying things you don't like. Fine. But there was one in there that I really liked, which was, this is stupid work because we're finished. That was my favorite. It was said basically, all the good stuff is already gotten. We're already there. We got Shoplifter, we got all of it. We got the things. It's all there. Anything else is like icing on the cake, and it's a ridiculous waste of time, and it's really so. Okay, so he's wrong, and so like here's a collector in Canada who has a lot of money. I can't overstate how much money they have, which is why I can't tell you who they are. There's others like them, but a lot of money. And unbelievably generous, which also kills me, and I can't tell you. Because, for instance, a long time ago, a one-of-a-kind signed PDP-1 manual for Zork came up in printout form. They paid $1,400 for it, and 4 hours later mailed me a PDF scan. So that's unbelievable generosity and weird money. But okay, so they've been buying up Apple II stuff for a while, because it's nice. These are not the same picture 4 times. These are all fully commercial programs from the early 80s in pristine or semi-pristine form that they were like, how do I get these to you? And they weren't comfortable mailing them to us, so 4AM and then John Morris and others, we sent them the hardware so that they could do the imaging at home and not let it was worth it, okay? Like, this doesn't exist anywhere, right? Like, now it exists on the Internet Archive, and it's scanned, but this program can't find it. Like, there's like one mention of it in one ad in one scanned magazine we were able to find. So now we have it, because they bought it. From who, I don't know. This thing is not even commercially available. This was like an internal copy maker, a copy protection making program with its own serial number and all of it. Like, so we have this now, right? So this is like crazy ass stuff, way down deep there, right? Or when I was shown a picture of the Print Shop Companion source code discs. And what's interesting about them is it's Print Shop and Print Shop Companion source code, but they're all Apple discs. It was all the work was done on the Apple and then cross-compiled over to the other systems, right? So we were sent some of the initial stuff. We imaged it. So actually, it's on GitHub. The Print Shop Companion. We're waiting for the other ones. So there's actually a place where you can go and look at the Print Shop Companion source code, which, as you know, needs Print Shop to work, but it enables us to have this source code, which was just sitting there of like, oh, I guess you want that? And the answer was yes. So people are sending beautiful versions of discs that we think of as existence, and this is one of 4AM's things, and others have talked about this. The program that won in history, it tends to be the program that got cracked the fastest, i.e. the most shoppingest, screwdriver in door jamist program approach, and gotten out to the AE lines as fast as possible. That is not the mark of quality. That is not the German level of engineering required for the sustained image. And plus, it's the version that just happened to be in that person's store or where they were working or whatever. So there's no guarantee. Going back and revisiting even the classics means that we end up with ones that are great. So this is, anyway, so I'll be the better person about it and just tell the guy he was wrong. Oh, I like this. It actually, did it crash on this? Did it crash? Oh my goodness. Yeah, that is the greatest thing I've ever had happen. All right, well, I'm going to go right there and go back again. That is the most fantastic thing I've ever had happen. I wish, oh, yeah, that's the new blue screen of death. He's walking by a guy's place in his cubicle and he's like, it's down again. It's just Bill Gates going like that at you. Anyway. All right, so fundamentally into this thing brings up a whole bunch of philosophical issues, and this is kind of where I am now. So like I said, the program is, everything is a success to me. This is a wild, unbelievable success. There is a collection on the Internet Archive called Apple Floppy Contributions, and it's extremely unsorted. What it is this is everything that I have ever imaged or gotten from 4AM, and was unique according to the MD5 signatures, and this is all what's thrown up. And you can see that number. It's 3,590 didn't exist before February on the internet versions.
Yeah, but it's just icing.
What?
But it's just the icing.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
I love icing.
Yeah, so that's all. So it's an absolute bonanza. Now, the variant worth of each individual program is meaningless to me, but there are things in there that are unique, kind of weird programs people wrote. They're user groups and commercial programs, and there's just a beautiful variety of these things. And again, it's 3,500. And again, for the people who don't know this whole way I do things, these programs may never have actually been touched by a human. They would have been imaged, uploaded, and then I have a computer that plays them and makes the screenshots. So it's a terribly sad machine somewhere in California that just plays bad Apple II software all day and takes pictures for me at my bidding. So that program is going off doing what its thing, and it's an absolutely lovely little program. But as a result, some of these are like waiting for exploration. They are unexplored caves. There are connections to be made, things to be found, names to be mentioned that are completely unseen, right? And there are other scenes. So this is actually the Amiga stuff that we have up on the archive. This is like something on the order of 3,000 to 6,000 demos, that I put up. That I, again, screenshotted. I had nothing to do with it. It's just completely up. I'm doing a lot of work on the MS-DOS side as well, and now we're starting to run into very interesting problems when you have a bonanza. Like, how do you even derive any functional interest in it? And we often do this in a lot of work, right? We create a thing that makes other stuff, and we hope that the people on the other end want it. And I'm even more. I think last time I talked, and in a lot of talks I gave about emulators, I would talk about, actually, I don't really care about, like, how perfectly is it emulated, because I already know where this is headed, right? Emulation will become the platform of choice, and by that I mean in the entirety of time, the amount of time an Apple II program will run on real Apple IIs versus running on emulators is going to always be a larger factor, because in theory the emulators will run forever. In the same way, all these other programs are dealing with that as well. Did I just make some people existentially unhappy about that? Except for one Apple II, which will always live forever, and it'll be fine. It'll be right there. It'll take 3 people, all of whom look suspiciously like Ken, to click 3 keys, and then it turns on and they can play it. Anyway, so outside of that, though, I had said that all I care about now is just ingesting media as fast as humanly possible. And that's what I've been up to. So again, we've been, the 3,500 plus floppy disks represent multiple thousands more that have been gone through. So I'm actually looking through all of these, and I just bought an automatic CD reader. So actually I'm now able to do 100 to 200 CD-ROMs a day in this system and pump them into the archive to everyone's delight. And it's like, before I said that's all I cared about. So I'm actually doing good with that ingestion mode. We're still out there looking for more Apple II people. We're still looking for things to come in, but like, that system's actually now working. 4AM's happy, well fed, and the chocolate chip cookies of uncracked disks, and it's all kind of functioning, right? But now I'm like, okay, now what about presentation and research? Like, that's where I am now. So I'm over here now. I'm way over in there. And I'm doing varying experiments along that line. So here's one that's called the Festival Floppies. Now, the Festival Floppies have only one thing in common. They were all in the same plastic bin at the Timonium Hamburee and Computer Festival in 2009. And a guy named Josh bought it for like $30. And he took them home and was like, now what do I do? And his answer was similar to everybody else's. Shoved it into a box, never to be seen until they heard about this crazy idiot. And so he sent them to me, and they were 3.5s. which are much easier to grab, as we've seen. And I imaged them all and put them up. And I called them the festival floppies. But again, this is a completely arbitrary thing. I just, 568 floppies. And screenshotted them so they all look pretty. But it was another person who worked with me, who volunteered, stepped up, put in the name of the person who made it, copied over any README files that were on the floppy, and turned them into perfectly pristine, beautiful views. And the top ones are getting something on the order of 200, have been played 200 times. Pornography always wins. Weird graphics always win. Weird names always win. You know, the same kind of attention grabbing of pick me, pick me. But it's kind of arbitrary. It's just, this was a system that was set up, right? And then there's like the weird stuff, like this is a sneakers movie press kit that came on an MS-DOS floppy. So I helped him image it, it's up on the archive, and the rest of it's scanned in. This is more effort because it's in a weird system, but it works. Last year, we started Mac OS emulation at the archive. And so you can now emulate up to System 7.5.3 on the Internet Archive. And it will boot up and it'll run fine. Mouse works. The first thing everyone bitches about is that when you click on the menu and you let go of the button, it goes away. You would not believe how much this ruins people. Like, it's functionally terrible. It's like finding out that a welding machine doesn't have any protection. You're just like, oh my God. They're so angry about it. This got an enormous amount of press, but one of the things that I tried with it was this time I tried not to do shock and awe. I mean, there's the shock and awe of the operating system, but in point of fact, what I did was we chose programs this time. We went out and we said, does it work in the emulator? Is it functional? Can we describe it? So when I first emulated MS-DOS, we put up 2,400 commercial programs, of which 30% didn't work very well. But hey, 2,400, shut up. Same thing with the arcade. Put up 1,100 games, many of which suck. I mean, truly suck. Truly, a quarter spent there is a quarter lost. It's a childhood memory that's negative. And we put them all up. And they kind of floated up to the top, went down, had takedowns, went up and down. So similarly with the Mac, we said, let's go for small. Let's do it small. Let's try to present it a different way. So like, this is a really disturbing hypercard stack. But it's part of a compilation of hypercard stacks and others, where basically what we did was we actually made, we curated and put together 50 megabyte hard drive images that are there, that when they boot up, present you with 300 hypercard stacks. So there's a shock and awe, but it's all in one box. Instead of all of the items and looking at 300 different screenshots, you've got to dig down and go into bathroom info server and carrot patch and go, oh, okay. But you're going to discover it. And so this approach has actually worked really well, right? So as I'm looking at these new collections, I'm still doing the old approach, but these are endless amounts of exploration, and it's all being done with the theory that there's more beyond. So it gets really deep here, right? So, for instance, one of the things that I discovered in my process was, damn, why does this game keep showing up in my beautiful MD5 hashing? And you can go MD5 hashing collision, but screw you, you're crazy if you think that's what's happening here. But it's basically saying, oh, these are different. And I'm like, how the hell are you different? So luckily there's a tool called VinBinDiff, but there's 1,000 others, but I went with VizBinDiff, and basically it looks at binary files and helps you figure out. And so I just used it just to go, okay, what's going on here? So it turns out that not everybody who copies things copied them onto clean disks that were set to 0. So some of the copy programs just overlay the new data over the old. So those are two different programs to it, even though they are functionally the same program. It is the same Pop-Tart lying on two differently colored placemats. There's just no way around that. That's in there forever, like everything in there. So any side, and so a certain percentage of you go, well, I want to see all the crap because that's fascinating. Maybe it has some Bitcoin wallets that aren't anywhere else. So yeah, good gold rush there for you. And so like that exists out there, and I would I would claim that because we know the provenance of these discs, i.e. I know that this guy was in New Orleans, I know these are from Rhode Island, I know these are from other areas like that, we can say, now we know that this disc went from here to here, and then this was changed. Because sometimes people would change the crack screens to indicate that they cracked it. Some people would put them into weird compilation sets and reverse like order and add them. So there's an entire bit of analysis and process there to kind of go even deeper into the discs and pull out the contents of the disc to figure out like which of, like how many different of these are there. And it is completely possible to emulate things like a CFFA in such a way that it would be possible to make a mega Apple II that had one of every program, or ones that had ones of every program that started. You probably want to split it by 2-letter alphabet or you will go insane. It's like, don't make one big one. But this is out there, right? These projects are out there, but I'm probably not going to do them. I'm probably not going to make that visualization. There's a beautiful visualization out there that I love. Somebody put in over time, they put in all the captain's logs from all of the different ships all through the 18th century, and in doing so they were able to show all the routes and where there were the most crashes and which places the sailors knew inherently where to sail that match other things later. And that's just kind of buried in that weird metadata. Somebody out there, maybe they're in this room, maybe there's one of them out there, who has a idea to go, well, then I will write a visualizer. I will do processing. I will come up ways to come up with that. But I have to work, and we have to work in the functionality of hoping that happens and not knowing it happens. That is where there is undiscovered country still in Apple II. There is an enormous amount of that. The people are going to say, is that at all what you want to do with your life? And my answer is actually yes. I think that is a fascinating bit of history. I think we continue here at this place to find really rich, interesting side. Last night, just for fun, there was a particularly hard to crack chess program, and we were trying to figure out why? Because Cucumber's sitting there trying to go after it, which is like using a diamond-tipped industrial drill to go after a bike lock. It's like, that's a hell of a bike lock. Holy crap. What's so good about the bike? What's up with the bike lock company? So we were just like, why is this chess program protected as if it's the friggin' Oak Island chest? And the answer, we don't quite know yet, but we do know the history of everything about that guy now. We know his home address. We know when he was working on this. We know that he hired the following company to do duplication, so we have 2 different names. We know that the guy who maybe did the protection moved to Australia. We had a grand old time invading privacy last night. It was a good time. And it was all based off this random problem of an Apple II disc. And so I think that's going to be there. I think there's a peat moss and evergreen area of research there. And again, I hope people look into it. And so just as a side note, to say that life does come at you fast, I'm dedicating this to my friend Dan Seldo, who when I was sick in the hospital sent me this joke, right? And the reason it says, thanks pal, sorry we didn't get a chance, is because a few weeks later he laid down to sleep and didn't wake up at 39. We don't quite know whatever happened. I helped dedicate a grove out in California to him. So life's random and crazy. So if you're gonna do it and you don't know what's going on, get your priorities straight and do Apple II. Thank you very much. Are you coming up to touch me? Okay, good. All right. You're always waiting for that one. There was one speech I was going to give, and as I came around the corner, a guy came out of the curtain and said, I need to speak to you. And I was like, okay, all right, go ahead. And he started to tell me there's a file I don't like, the file of mine, you wish you'd take it down. And I said, I never do that, but I will do it because you do not have a knife. That was your thank you for not having a knife. Same thing with this. When I did one with the CD, somebody sent me a CD that was blank. It was a blank CD. I'll always remember this, and scrawled on it, it said, maybe this would have had data if you weren't such an obtuse dick. But it wasn't a bomb. It had all the hate, None of the sugar, so that's fine. I'll take the diet crank letter every single day. Anyway, anyone have any? It's a great life. I'll keep you to live. We'll go with you first. Go ahead.
How many people actually want the discs back, and if they don't want it back, what are you doing?
It's about 75%. About 75% of the people want their discs back because they have emotional commitment to it. They don't just want. Some of them bought them speculatively to go, I want to copy whatever's on these, and hooray, a service came that's free. Most people want it back. Some of them borrowed it from work or from school, so they want it back. The other 25%, I'm just sticking in the Internet Archives. I'm writing scanned, putting them in the archive because it's not that big. I mean, I have a tractor trailer full of manuals at the archive. A couple boxes of a few thousand discs aren't going to kill anybody. Yeah.
Speaking of manuals, we're preserving the bits, great. But a lot of this software, especially productivity stuff in the early days, inscrutable without a manual.
Uh-huh.
So in the appeal, please ask the folks that hold the manuals and still have them, please scan them and upload them, which poses its own challenges because some of them are spiral bound, some of the ones in 3-leaf binders or 3-ring binders are great.
Yeah. So
scan, snap, and put them up.
So there's so you get actually into a very interesting deep problem, which is how many people are using any of this in any way that is a functional utility that plays parts of their lives? And how many of them have manuals that are interesting enough for us to put them up to understand them? I don't mean in terms of like, oh no, they'll be destroyed. I just mean in terms of focusing the laser. So what happens is that if somebody has something and we determine it's pretty unique, we'll say, could you please scan this manual for us? But sometimes we're discovering, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that in other talks, there are cases where there's what's the two greatest, it's the I'm trying to think of it, they give it, it's what they give you in the hospital to kill any germs on you. Boy, I'm hearing a lot of murmuring medical terms. I should not have done that. Yeah, well, no. So you have bacteria that's resistant to that. Yeah, you have stuff that kills you, even though you took the thing to make it not kill you, right? And what we have in the Apple community is silent versioning, which is where it's completely the same, except they randomly started changing the contents or the protection or what's on it. So it pays to go into each one, but it does mean that we'll end up with, if we were to say, and each time we found a disk or something, please scan the thing. I'm hoping that somebody will build a registry. I didn't even talk about that in this. I decided not to, but there's been some question, and one of the great holy grail questions is exactly how much Apple II software was there. And let's just separate it from not just like 10, hello, 20, end. How much time did somebody go, this is going to be it, Martha, we're going to get rich, and they put it into a bag or a box or a thing, and they put it out there? Apple cheats in their marketing. Sometimes people complete the marketing. They mention everything that's CPM, and they put it into that. So when they're like, with 45,000 or whatever the number is, it's some huge number, with over blah thousand available for the Apple II, if you plug in this card and use all this software that's already over here. So I don't know what that number is. And somebody conclusively going after that number would be a real boon, because then we could kind of cross-compare. Similarly, this is why it's been my destiny to put up massive amounts of magazines to be able to go, look, here's all the ads, all the books that are out there of like Apple II software directories, there's a number of those. Try to find educational catalogs and just say like, what's out there? I think that number is not known, and I don't think we actually really do know. And I think somebody could do a great talk about everything they discovered from this point now to next year about how much software there actually is, because we have this glorious golden machine that is ingesting everything. And then we'll be able to say, do we have the manual for this? Do we have the manual for that? Do we have the card for it? Do we have the disc label scanned? While I've been doing this, I've also been scanning the sleeves that are unique, because it was easy, but it's going to be non-comprehensive. But there's some whack-ass sleeves out there. That was a great business for whoever got into that. I have a Fred Meyer disc. Oh, that didn't hit. All right, it's fine. But Fred Meyer's is a supermarket chain, but they had discs. So they had customized supermarket discs. Damn, people, go to Fred Meyer. It's much better than Walmart. Anyway, another question. Anyone have a question? Go ahead.
You said you had takedown requests from copyright holders in the arcade.
I implied that.
Can you publicly say if there have been any in the Apple II section?
Yes, I can publicly say. First Star Software does not want you touching their motherfucking Boulder Dash. And technically Spy, and then while they're there, they elbow Spy versus Spy. But it's obvious they could not care less about the Spy versus Spy program. It's just that also has our name on it. So they were not happy about Boulder Dash. So that's why there's only 17 copies up. Anyway. Yeah, because they still sell Boulder Dash for iOS, for PlayStation, they continue to manufacture Boulder Dash. Exactly, as a direct monetary strike is this anyway, yeah, so no, and no, and I know where they live. Anyway, so go for it.
You just do certain makes of computer, you do things through a certain date. What is your scope?
My scope, okay, so, no, everything. But for this crowd, I talk about the Apple II stuff. But I'm like, we're doing Commodore, we're doing Atari, we're doing a really strange machine that they only made 100 of in New Zealand. We have that one. There was a bunch of machines that are like weird off-brand versions of the Apple, everything. MAME is continuing to be glorious. They just started emulating a point-of-sale system. They have actually emulated a synthesizer deck that can take MIDI commands and work. So we'll put those up. It does the deck talk, if any of you remember the deck talk, or anyone listening remembers the deck talk. It emulates the deck talk, speak and spell, handheld games, game watch games. We'll do all of them up in the emularity. Whatever comes up and can fit, we'll do. So no, I just kept it for this group. They didn't want to hear about my DOS problems. We're hoping to get Windows 95 working this year. We're gonna get Commodore working this year. Let me think, what else? Is there any other that's like big names? The thing is, like, at some point you get into like a weird, like for emulation purposes on the archive, you get into like a weird, like, is this worth it? Because like already we're seeing this weird problem where once you get to past a certain era, you're dealing with like 200, 300, 400, 800 meg payloads for the data. And you're going to sit there and you're going to smack a gig into your browser. I mean, it when it doesn't work, the letters they send are amazing. There was a guy from Australia who waited 13 hours to find out it didn't work, and he was angry, but he was far away. I figured he'd calm down in the flight. Go ahead in the back, and then.
Given the 40 years of the Apple II and the multiple versions, a lot of people, their only first and ever representation of a game included various crack screens and stuff like this.
Sure.
And now we're coming through and we're re-preserving them and the clean cracks for those people who bought the images and bought it that way. Do you have a way that you sort it or preference cracked by so-and-so and then the ones that did work versus the ones that did and the battle back and forth between the groups?
I put them all up. The archive is not very good for individualized perceptions of reality represented as they want it. We'd like something like that. There have been attempts over the years, but they've all come out weird, where a person goes, you know what, I just care about books in which women are the protagonist. I only care about software in which there are guns. Or I only want software. Like, there's no way to like really build those lists directly on the archive, but we've also, conversely, on the developer side, tried to make it that everything is open, so that you can get down into, like, you can actually go straight down into an ISO and actually link down into a file in the ISO, which I will tell you a lot of people use, and the .zips. Similarly, people can build up their own external listing stuff and then use the archive freely. We won't play any refer tricks. We won't photo bucket you. So my hope is that people who have a specific, like, this is the way to go, they'll just use the archive which is what it was always intended for, as the jumping off point to go, here were my favorite games, and then here they are, and look, here's a cracked version, here's a and like do that scholarly work. So that's my hope. We'll see. I'm going to skip you just because everyone gets a shot. Go ahead.
Is there any attempt to preserve like dongles used for copy detection and some of the other off-ball hardware?
There's definitely been used with the hardware, and I didn't do it here, but there's definitely, I've been working hard as I can to, there's like another layer to MAME, which is they do ROM dumps, or they receive ROM dumps, and I'm really trying to, I'll keep doing it in this community. It's very hard, this is a hard ramp by any stretch. We are in the golden age of software deprotection. We are not in the golden age of ROM dumping. We are not aggressively going through stacks of them, going which ones are new, ripping all their ROMs and transferring them. Like that, it's a smaller crowd. And I think part of it is just that it's really super and mysterious, like floppy disks used to be. I put it in, I copy it, it does not work. I do not understand. What magic is this? Are you a wizard? Now we're in that with like ROMs. People think it's like really impossible unless you have arcane super knowledge. And so I'd like to see more of that, because I think there's a whole variety of Apple II cards for this community, whole variety of Apple II cards who could have their ROMs dumped and we could be emulating them. And it would be really neat. Networking is going to work eventually in the future. Being able to save to other kinds of attributes is going to work in the future. The way that the emularity works on the archive, for instance, it's possible to call two different items' contents and combine them in your load. We do that mostly for like the Macintosh stuff. We're like, use this system, boot off this macOS hard drive, now load this floppy disk in, and it'll do it. So you don't have to have any other piece in. And if we ever get to it, we're going to have it that you can actually declare the configuration of the machine and hit reset. Like we've been working on that. So eventually you'll do it. There'll be a command here. It'll say like, well, put a Mockingbird in this one and reboot, and then you can try it again. Or make it, don't be a 2C. I mean, you think it's a 2E, make it a 2C. What's that do? And that will happen. Like, there's a place called De Facto 2 out there. They do that with the PC emulator. Like, they have it that you're like, what sound card do you have? And how much memory did you have this? And it works. So yeah, I'd like to see all that happen. The ingestion of the software needs to happen no matter what. Ingestion of hardware is the next frontier after that. Any others? Do we have anything else? You get, oh, yep.
So, have you actually had to take down anything of the request?
Well, we just answered that. Were you not here?
I heard the one it sounds like the channel thing sent you the technical request, but you didn't take it down.
Well, we took down the one they had.
Just the one they asked.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Oh no, people will say to you, am I saying this on a no. No, like if a person says to you, like, hey, that's mine, take that down, and any other of mine you have, we took down the one you requested. Because we're not your errand boy. We're not going to take your homework assignment. Plus, we have no idea. All of the Omni magazines came down on a request from New Omni Media, who own it, except they just got sued by Penthouse because they don't own it. All they did was buy the storage container that had Robert Guccione's old stuff and then claimed they owned it all and all the contents. And George R.R. Martin disagrees. And so that's going on. Like, so we respect it, especially if it comes in the form of a proper DMCA, which it doesn't always. Sometimes it's just, might as well be written backwards with a crayon. Like, I am madman, make things go down. I've also had we've had people who emulate lawyers, like they're running lawyer emulation. They're not actually lawyers. They're not even the owners. They're just angry we exist, and they'll say, "This is terrible. You should take this down based on the following rules." Conversely, there's people who are like, "You can never take it down because of the following interpretation I made up." That's fine. It's only because America isn't. I went to Australia. Okay, so during the time I was having a heart attack, I gave a speech, and I hosted a 5-hour games marathon. So again, take me on. But in there, my talk, which I wouldn't allow to go up, was just basically about how much of it, like that the actual Mad Max landscape is the American copyright system. And I just kind of like talked about how just horrifying it is here. And because Australia has no fair use provision, and has discussions right now about copyright and getting themselves up to copyright, and my thing was like, don't do it. It's a horrifying, people spend way too much time lost in the morass of how to even read it. And like a lot, is this political to say? Like a lot of law, it eventually filters down to who has the most money to execute perceived rights upon people who are scared and unable to sustain even one round of legal discussion. So there's a lot of people who will give me things, and they'll give them to me to put up because, fine. I mean, I've been in courtrooms before, it's fine, but they are literally terrified that their children won't be able to eat, and it's an honest and real fear that they have. So they're like, I don't want to put this up on the disc because it says that I'm entitled to go up to 10 years in jail for putting up this Apple II floppy, and I don't, and the copyright is actually longer than my children's lifespan, and I'm afraid to do it. And so you basically say, look, that's a ridiculous thing to do. I'd rather, I want to be that guy in the holding cell explaining why I'm here. And I'll be like, and they'll be like, no stabbings? I'm like, no, not one stabbing. But that's also going into, if you want to get all crazy or whatever, I mean, like I said, I went, this is going to sound like I'm being way too emotional, but it's not, so please don't take it that way. But when I was really sad when I found out that when I'm talking to the doctors, I was supposed to be, I didn't feel well for a week because I was having a heart attack, but I didn't know it. And I go in and the doctor's like, well, it's either, indigestion or a heart attack. Take this. I took it. And he goes, ooh, that's bad. And he takes me to another doctor. And that doctor is and he was fantastic. And he was like, I'm going to drive you to the operating room because they'll let me in. So we'll get past all the other garbage because you're an American. And he drives me in there. And there's a doctor there, and he's like, we're going to see you tomorrow. And I said, oh, George gave me a note. And he looked at it, he goes, huh, all right, we're going to operate on you in 20 minutes. And they sit down, and they gave me the super, if you've ever gone skydiving, the really fast, rehearsed thing. They're like, do this, tuck your arms in, don't hit the ground with your head, go. He was basically like, survival rate is very high. And he's talking about they operated. I don't have any. I don't have any scar on my chest. They came in through a catheterization through this wrist, so they went in all the way up there. And they said paralysis chances are very low. And I wanted to do this arm because I'm right-handed, and they were like, we really need this arm to get to the heart. And I was like, okay, fine. You've got the MapQuest, I don't. And I was awake for the operation. So basically, I had to hug my fiance. And my last words to her were, you were the best of everything. Go into the emergency room. They're playing Bon Jovi. My last tweet was, everything was great and I had a really wonderful time. And I went in and they're operating on me. And now I'm either going to die or it's going to be fine. And I didn't even know at the time it was a heart attack. But I will tell you that I'm lying on there in my stuff, no general anesthesia. I'm not crazy, but I was like, this is fine. I'm not joking. I'm like, this is fine. My belief system has been transferred to a new generation. People liked me. I'm famous for the right things generally. People know what to do with my crap. Most of it was made of plastic and paper. It'll live or it'll die. This was fun. And that was it. And then they operated me, I was fine. But I literally was as zen as you could possibly be. No tears, no wreck. So for me, everything else is a goddamn bonus round. And if somebody writes me and says, we own Spy versus Spy, I'm like, tell me more. All right, enough of that. All right, see you at lunch.